Hey y'all, we're gonna do some painting, some watercolor painting and some talking today. My name is Jeannie Mauve, and yes, we are painting because the apocalypse is here. So I decided to try to get back into painting because something to kind of calm down my nerves during this time. I personally have been through a lot, and then with the recent civil unrest and looting, it's been a lot, and especially as a Black woman in the United States, it's been a really stressful time for me. I remember as the police sirens sound, I remember right before the riots and looting and protesting started. I actually got pulled by a cop for basically nothing. It was, just to try to meet the quota for the end of the month. Luckily, I didn't get any ticket or warning, because literally there was nothing to pull me over. It was totally, basically, I was listening to Michael Jackson and dancing and at an intersection, and when the light turned green, I drove. So that was really interesting. I mean, the cop wasn't like a complete jerk, but he did pull me over without justification. It was really weird. And then the weekend, Saturday, I remember going to the park and it being a normal day. I know there was issues in the Twin Cities, and I didn't hear too much about it spilling over to other cities. But then Sunday morning, it was basically the apocalypse. A lot of the major shopping areas and malls were closed off because of looting. And it was the most surreal experience, I want to say, because I remember I was out with family, and I remember that morning we went to Dunkin' Donuts, and it was at this shopping mall, and it was totally normal. People were eating outside with masks, of course, but nothing to indicate that hey, there's some stuff going down. And then later that afternoon, basically that same shopping center, people were looting. And I remember coming back home, and on my way home, you just saw tons of people going to different businesses, like just grabbing like merchandise, and not like, you know, hurting anybody, but it was just like kind of like non-violent anarchy in the streets, basically. It was just so surreal. And like the police, they would be at the intersection basically blocking off the streets so people could basically, you know, take merchandise at these stores. And but then like you would go down other blocks or other nearby suburbs and people were just shopping like normal. It was very surreal, and like, you know, basically behaving as if it was just a normal Sunday afternoon. I remember a couple of stores like across the street from me, or one store I should say, like people just started to, it was a O'Reilly's, an auto supply store, an auto parts like supply store, and they just started to just break in and loot. And I remember seeing people with walking down the streets with stacks of shoes and driving with TVs on top of like their cars, and, you know, clothes, and just so much merchandise. And I just thought like, and the police just going up down the streets with sirens. Oh shoot, I didn't mean to do that. That's okay, we can fix it. I'm kind of out of practice as far as watercolor, so bear with me. I just am doing this to like kind of try to relax my nerves. And I remember just thinking like, wow, we're in the apocalypse, you know, and thinking like, what's gonna come of this? Like, you know, and then, you know, you hear stories about in the Twin Cities, you know, they basically burning down neighborhoods. And, you know, I'm thinking like, man, I don't want my neighborhood to be burned down, you know. That didn't happen, but it was just very surreal. So like Sunday, you know, just total, just kind of this quiet, non-violent anarchy as far as I'm concerned. Like, you know, I have heard different stories come out of like, you know, different parts of the city. I'm in Chicago, and I'm thinking like, you know, this man's murder, you know, it just was the straw that broke the camel's back. And then you also have people who have been in quarantine, have lost their jobs, not receiving any money, any support, and just frustrated at just the racial injustice that basically that comes with being black in America. You know, it doesn't really matter what class, as far as like, you know, being black in this country, you know, you're gonna experience bias and racism. And I remember Monday morning seeing all of like, you know, the white folks like on my Facebook timeline, you know, with the Black Lives Matter, and, you know, kind of, I don't want to sound cynical, why can't I talk? cynical, but I felt like, you know, there was a lot of virtue signaling going on. You know, like, I haven't heard of people, like, really white people and like non-black folks in any way talk about racism, police terrorizing black people as they do in this country in any way before this, before it was popular to be for civil rights for black people. And then I started to see all of these emails in my inbox, in my Gmail, Black Lives Matter, and, you know, just all of this stuff from these companies. And it started to make more sense to me. Like, these companies, it's becoming, you know, marketable, fashionable, but also, you know, these companies not necessarily, like, basically doing damage control. I, like, basically, you know, hey, we support, you know, human rights for black people because, you know, if there's another instance where a black person is being basically lynched on TV, we don't want our stores to be burned. We want you guys to remember that we stood, you know, on the right side. But it's like, where have you been at, sis? Like, this has been happening. That's the thing. It's kind of like, now, why now? What, like, it is because, to me, it's kind of like it took violence, you know, it took burning down these corporations to give people to understand that, hey, you know, this issue needs to be addressed. It took, you know, because, yeah, you'll have, like, racist people who don't like black people just say, oh, well, you guys are animals and, you know, you're tearing down your own communities, blah, 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 whatever. That's kind of like a racist dog signal, because historically, black people have been disenfranchised from building economic wealth. A lot of these businesses that were burned down were not black owned. These were white corporations that black people patronized, basically. They were patrons of. So it's kind of like, you know, at the same time, yeah, you are burning down, like, your local, you know, Target or Walmart, and you might, you know, have to go out of your neighborhood now to get groceries, whatnot, somewhere else. But it was effective at getting these corporations, because they see now, like, you know, people have time to really put in work as far as, like, you know, protesting, rioting, looting, however, you know, you want to categorize it. They have time, and they see that, oh shoot, this is going to really affect our business, especially in a time where, you know, we're not doing that great because of the coronavirus, you know. So there's limited, the profits have been even more affected. But I guess, like, to me, there's anger because it took such a visceral reaction as far as the Black community for people to pay attention and see that, like, oh wow, this is really messed up, what's been happening to Black people in America, the brutalization by the police. But also, like, I do have some frustration because, yeah, we're talking about police brutality, and that definitely does need to be addressed. But we also need to talk about the economic disenfranchisement of Black people in this country for centuries, and what needs to be done to fix that. You know, throughout history, Black people in this country have been locked out of building wealth. And, like, you know, there have been talks about, you know, reparations. Is that still, can we bring those conversations back up? Can we have these candidates? I'm painting this side now. This is a flower that I took a picture of from Hobby Lobby. So, but basically, you know, like, there needs to be talks about not only police brutality, but systematic racism as far as, like, our economic system, and how, you know, if we're really concerned about, you know, human rights as far as, like, Black people are concerned, Black Americans especially, because we did, you know, help build this country that was snatched up from the Native Americans that were here. You know, that's a whole other pot of beans. But economically, we are old, and this country has never acknowledged its debt that it's owed to Black Americans. It's all of this, like, dog whistling of, oh, you know, pick yourself up by the bootstraps and blah 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 blah. And we know that's BS because, you know, white Americans, they've been able to historically, you know, buy houses with basically pennies on the dollar, and that have accumulated wealth that they were able to pass down to their generations. We don't have that. We've been economically shut out from that, and also regulated to basically certain neighborhoods because of redlining, especially in the city of Chicago. Like, in Chicago, we have hyper segregation, you know. Also too, you know, shut out from a lot of these corporate jobs as well. You know, not to say that, like, for me, I don't know, corporate is not the end all be all anymore, but we've been shut out of there. And even when we are in these corporate jobs, a lot of us face a lot of racism and hostility from our non-Black and white colleagues. We face a lot of, like, discrimination, hostility, and harassment, and it's swept under the rug because no one wants to, like, ruffle feathers. you know, and it's stressful. That's another thing. Being a black person in America, it's very stressful. And a lot of us, you know, we don't really talk about it, or we talk about it in the company of, like, you know, in kind of closed doors amongst ourselves. But it's very stressful because it's like, you know, you have to make a living. But a lot of these places, you know, they try to make it, you know, basically kind of hell for you to make a living, because, you know, you're just an N-word that people can vent their frustrations out on. And I'm tired of that. I'm really tired of that. And I think, and I see, like, I've been seeing on LinkedIn, I do not like how this is coming out, but it's okay. There's always more attempts. But I see on LinkedIn and other places where you have black people that are being more vocal about what they're experiencing. I don't know if I don't know if the next thing will be basically exposing a lot of racial, what I want to call it, just racial tomfoolery at these jobs. You know, will there be any, like, types of reform? Maybe, maybe not. Hopefully, what I would like to see actually are more, hopefully more banks, like more money will be available for black people to open up and start their own businesses. Hopefully, you know, with this current dialogue, maybe now racism at these jobs will be taken more seriously. You know, people will think twice about spewing some anti-black racism. And the reason, you know, I don't think it needs to be said that, like, yes, other groups face discrimination, but right now we need to talk about what's going on as far as the racism and black Americans go, like, for real. So you know, nothing again, you know, against my non-black brothers or sisters at all, but right now we need to talk about the just black racism that has been the foundation of this country since basically its inception. You know, it's right now we see so much, like, social inequality going on, and for decades black Americans have been basically the underclass that everybody has felt like they could beat up. You know, we have become like the face of, like, taking out, like, the hostility that people feel in this country from, like, just different groups. Like, even in, like, the medical arena, you know, I remember I was pregnant with my son, and my son is biracial, and just some of the remarks that I would get from, like, the doctor who was my OBGYN, and And like after I had my son in the hospital, it was just like, the system is really racist. And like there's like statistics to show that like black women, you know, we kind of suffer the most from during our pregnancies, because like, you know, all the racism that's in the medical industry. Like, this is the thing about America. The racism is so embedded in every facet of the culture. It literally, you know, anti-black racism is kind of like is as American as apple pie. And that's being challenged now, which is good. It needs to be challenged. It needs to be dismantled. I think people are just tired of the bullshit. Like, I know me personally, like, I'm tired of being treated like a second-class citizen in like a country that, you know, my ancestors literally have put their blood, sweat, tears, and flesh into. I'm as American as any other person that is a citizen, yet I'm treated as like a pariah. People are freaking tired of that. I remember I was talking to my little sister, and she's in high school, and she was telling me that one of the girls that she that's in high school with her, this girl is white, was exposed saying the N-word on social media. And I guess the school informed the college that she was going to, and you know, that opportunity was taken from her. And you know, it's kind of like, how many generations will this go on? You know, like, how many people, like, how many generations, you know, as far as just, you know, this nonsense carry over to? It's holding the country back, to be honest with you. There's all types of, because we're so racially divided and so many opportunities are basically shut out, basically shuts out black people in this country. How many doctors, how many cures, how many inventions have we missed out on because America, because you're black? How many black inventors, business people, doctors could have like cured a lot of stuff? But because, you know, and this is the thing too, you still have white people out here that think black people have lower IQs than them. If you want to test how quote unquote woke your white friend is, your non-black friend is, talk about IQ and race and see exactly their reaction. How woke are they? Just saying. A lot of y'all might not want to do that. You might get some rude surprises. I will say one thing. Silence is deafening. To me, if your answer isn't, that's really silly, of course, you know, black people don't have lower IQs than any other group. We don't. A lot of those tests are biased. And also there is a lot of miseducation in black neighborhoods. On top of, you also, because of economic disenfranchisement, the parents are not as involved because they're just struggling to make ends meet, or, you know, because of poverty and the lack of generational opportunity, you have severe depression going on, and so they're completely checked out. That's a real thing. But yeah, anyways, I'm done with this picture for now. Ugh. I don't really like how this came out, but this is just like a first time. It'll get better. And I think this will get better. I'm hoping a lot of more conversations will come up about, you know, the social inequality, disparity. Yes, that needs to be addressed, but we also need to address the economic portion, because if black people, if we have our own economic foundation as a community, we can have more of a say about policies that do not favor us. We can have, you know, more racial injustice, and also build up our communities so we're not so vulnerable to the terror of the state right now. But yeah, I just wanted to get that out. Alrighty, I'll talk to you guys later, and we'll do another painting. Hopefully it'll turn out better, but yes. Alrighty guys, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye.